Hello, this brief report will focus on how the loss of platform access on excursion and private rail cars has impacted the rider experience, and in turn, the sector as a whole. So I'm Steve Fritzenkotter. I have a market research firm, and I teach market research as an adjunct professor in the UC system in California. In addition, I'm the co-founder of the group MakeTrainsGreatAgain.org. I'm particularly interested in this cause because I am a regular Amtrak customer, and I do ride on private and excursion rail cars. I have noticed how the change in safety rules from Amtrak has negatively affected the experience, and this is a worthy cause for me. So I want to cover a survey with you. It's a very short survey, and then I want to offer recommendations based on the data that was uncovered. Lastly, APRCO was consulted in this process and has reviewed the survey. So before we get there, this was a news blast that came out in 2018, right after the rule changes that Amtrak put forth for access to platforms. And so it basically says that Amtrak was very disappointed in Amtrak's decision, and the membership particularly was disappointed, every single member. And the platform riding has always been an important part of the private railcar experience. And there have been very, very few mishaps. And I'm going to go over how important it is in this survey to riders. Then the RPCA said their organization's underwriters have reported no incidents involving occupancy on platforms or vestibules. So the intention here of this project is to work with Amtrak to work out a compromise that could allow safe riding on platforms with sensible rules and procedures. As far as the survey is concerned, I want to go over the logic behind it and the technical part of the sampling. We put the population size of 100,000, which is more than the actual population size, but wanted to just round it off at an even number. In order to achieve a 90% confidence level in the data, and along with that, a margin of error of 10%, which we feel that is somewhat acceptable, that the calculation told us that we would need 69 respondents randomly selected from the overall audience, and we've been able to do that. So that's the logic why we have the amount of respondents that we do. So here are the actual survey questions. How important is access to the vestibules and platform, to the rider experience on excursion and private rail cars? 6 was extremely important, and 1 was not important. And you notice that all respondents says it was important. There were different degrees of importance, but very to extremely important. Suffice to say, it is a very important feature of riding in those on the cars. Now, in 2018, the safety change, the removal of access by Amtrak, we wanted to find out if the audience that we surveyed thought it was justified based on the fact there were no serious mishaps to that point, and obviously the main the overall majority said it was not just justified. Some said they weren't sure, they didn't know much about it, but most said it was completely unjustified. Now here's where we get into some form of something we could possibly work with. Given Amtrak's liability, we understand that they are liable for the safety of their passengers. The private cars and excursion cars are essentially their passengers once they connect to Amtrak. So what are the respondents in the survey willing to do to sort of meet halfway? And most said they would wear safety goggles. Most said they would abide by putting some kind of extra reinforcement around the platforms. And I'm going to go over that. I'm going to show you a model that's something we could use for that. Could be plexiglass, higher railings, could be netting, something like that. Would passengers be willing to be seated at all times? Yes, of course. Would they not consume alcohol and smoke? Yes, of course. So the vast majority of the respondents were receptive to some sort of safety precaution to take some of the liability away from Amtrak. And some said no precautions necessary. You're always going to get those in any kind of a sampling. Next question. Would you be more likely to ride an excursion or private car if you had access to platforms and vestibules? Commanding yes on that. And so, yes. And this really goes to how removing the access has changed the rider experience to the point where it's negatively affected the businesses, especially of excursion car owners. And some have had to put their cars in mothballs and store them because the riders thought it was impacting their experience so much. To get fresh air and be on a platform, they didn't want to take they didn't want to invest in it. So that's very telling. Now, this was for the train car owners and managers. Would you be willing to purchase extra insurance to help relieve Amtrak's liability? Most said they would. Yeah, these are all forms of yes. Nobody said no. Some said outright said yes. Some said as long as it's not too expensive. Others said that they need to know more about it. But they were, let's just say, receptive to the idea of having extra insurance, again, to take some liability away from Amtrak. And then this last pie chart is reflecting, of course, 70 respondents, is the age distribution, which was fairly evenly distributed, which we wanted. We didn't want just older people or younger people. Now, this was one question in the survey. We left it optional, that they could fill in extra comments about the limitations and to access. And basically, I'll paraphrase a few of these. For the most part, I'm not understanding the sudden prohibition enacted a few years ago, given the safety record that was there. Some said losing access. One person said losing access had negatively affected the excursion car business, and that is a fact. And please bring back safe access. And one person basically mentions that it was a careless guest who was doing something on the platform, drinking or something, and which caused everybody to be punished. And I'm not sure if that's exactly true. Given the overall safety record, it's only fair Amtrak correct the draconian safety rules. I'm not sure if I would use that term, but that's one of the respondents said. Regaining access to the platforms would greatly enhance rider experiences. So this is part of the presentation in the static slides. You will be copied on. You can review these more closely, read every word if you want to. This is a model of what one creative private car owner did. They had the standard railing here, which goes up about, I think, 3'6", the standard height. Then what they did, they enclosed the open space with high strength netting, nylon netting. And this netting is extremely strong. Matter of fact, if you got in the front of the car, took a running start, let's say you weighed 350 pounds. I'm not sure you'd fit through the doorway, but let's say you weighed 350 pounds, took a running start, and you just leaped against the netting, it would hold you. So this is extremely strong. Doing this treatment was not prohibitively expensive either. So look what's happening here. You're sitting in chairs. They've got their goggles on. They're enjoying the fresh air. They are safe from any kind of movement to be thrown out of the car. They're completely safe. And with the goggles, they're protected against any projectiles that have never hit anybody, but just in case they did. So, and again, they have a roof here. So what would be the danger of being out here? And I would like to have someone argue with me to show me why this is not safe. So the survey summary in closing is safe access to platforms and vestibules is a critical part of the passenger experience. Yes, that's for some slide 3. The vast majority of respondents believe that the 2018 restrictions by Amtrak were unjustified. Yes, almost everybody. Respondents would be receptive to increased safety precautions if access could be restored. So we would ultimately hope we could come up with some sort of compromise on that. And Amtrak would be satisfied with fulfilling their safety requirements, and the riders would have basically a better experience and more likely to ride. Riders would be much more likely to book the excursion in private cars if the access was allowed, and there has been a hard financial impact on the excursion industry in particular because the outdoor access was taken away. And then lastly, car owners would be receptive to extra insurance, take away some of the liability possibly from Amtrak. Hopefully that could be part of a compromise. So with all that said, I hope this research makes the point that we were trying to make, that access to these areas would be good for the industry, good for Amtrak, because there'd be more cars, more revenue there as well. And ultimately, lastly, good for the riders. And I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, please email me here, sfritzen@uci.edu. Thank you very much.